Today we're going to talk about Figma. Figma is a user UI UX application that is web-based. So it's not something that you need to download to your computer, though they do have a downloadable version, but it just kind of lives up on the web. So think about Google Drive and how Microsoft is currently. So what you're going to do is you're going to log into Figma. And then what you're going to see is something similar to this. Now you might not have obviously as many previous projects as I do. It might look a little different there, but these are under your recents. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a new project. And you're going to go all the way to the upper right-hand corner, and we're going to make a new plus. Now, I'm just going to show you, as you're working on that, an example of what we're going to be talking about today. So we're going to be taking our sitemap, and I'm going to jump to it for us. And we're going to be taking our sitemap and now creating from our sitemap and our paper wireframes that we already did this on paper and translating them into low fidelity prototypes. So all that means is, again, we're not going to be adding any images yet. We're not worrying about fonts or colors. We're not there yet. We're still just worrying about the basic framework of the app. So you can see here we're going to start labeling our pages. So I have the splash page, our login page, and then the home screen. And I usually do these in order, so you can kind of go through your wireframes, your paper wireframes, and just redo them on this interface. And that's still loading, so we'll let that kind of go. So let's get started on how this all begins. So if I go back here to files, in this interface, when you log in, you're going to go to the upper right hand corner, which says new file. And when I make a new file, it looks like this. Now, it looks a lot like Adobe XD, which if you're familiar with Adobe XD from the previous project, it's going to feel familiar. Now, if you're not, it's going to help you when we switch over to XD coming up. So on the left-hand side, we can see we have layers, which has no layers yet, and assets. We're really not going to be adding any assets since we're doing these as wireframes, and we're only doing text boxes and text. It's going to be really limited, but you can at least see where those assets are. And then on the right side, you can see there's 3 different modes. There's design mode, there's prototype, and then inspect. So we're going to be dealing with design. If we were prototyping this, we would work with the prototype that would link the pages or the screens together. And then finally, inspect is actually for the developer that can help develop this when they're coding it in HTML or CSS. So we're going to be working in design mode. And then up here, these are our buttons up at the top. Very limited again. There's not much to it. We have our move button. We have our frame button. This is like our artboard. We have our rectangle, which also has the line, arrow, ellipse, polygon, star, or place image. The pen tool or pencil tool, type tool, the hand tool, and the comments. So very limited up here as well. The main thing is in this kind of search bar, which you can see here that we can make new files, place images, save, export as a PDF, a couple text variations. We're going to be worrying about some libraries coming up. So let's get started. We don't have anything here. We don't even have an artboard yet. So the first thing we have to do is make an artboard. So how we're going to do that is we're going to go to the frame tool and click on that. When you click on the frame tool, over on the design mode, you can see what your options are. So if you're doing this for a watch or a desktop or tablet, so I quit my mail. Whatever you're designing for. My advice here is to choose the phone that you have going forward. So if you have an Android, pick that. If you have an iPhone 8, choose that. I have an iPhone 10, so I'm going to choose that. When you click that, it's going to make your artboard on your screen. A lot of the same shortcuts work as they do in Illustrator or Photoshop. So Command Z or Control Z on a PC, zoom in and zoom out is the same. You can toggle around the screen just by using your mouse or trackpad. Now, first thing we want to know is if we click on the word that says iPhone 11 Pro X-1 or whatever your phone is, you can rename this. So if I click on this, oops, undo that. I can come over here, double click, and you can see I can rename it in my layers, which I'm going to do. This is going to be my splash page. So this is that loading page. And all I want in the loading page is a place where my logo would be. So it's just going to go smack in the middle. There we go. And then I'm going to, you can see over here my layers, it has splash page, and then under is all the items that are in it. You can lock it so I don't have to worry about it, and I could hide it if I wanted to. So I'm just going to lock it. I'm not going to change that page at all. Then I'm going to go and I'm going to, we can make another one. So I can go back here again and choose that again. If I wanted to move this page, I would click the name of it and drag it to wherever I wanted to. So that's how I like to kind of put them side by side. Again, if I double click on it, I can rename it. Whoops, I hit that sweet spot. And say this is our login screen. Now I can start building my login screen. So, and you can see here, I kind of started to do that on this side. And I wanted my logo, email address, the kind of a rectangle, a button, forget password. There is a couple things that Figma helps with. It has a couple libraries that you can utilize to kind of add some of these little elements to it. And they do have some templates that you can work with. So let's take a look at that. So I'm going to go back over here and I'm going to go to the search. I'm going to go to libraries. And in libraries, you can either do these libraries that you've already made, like with your team. So if you're working in a group, this is really helpful. You can see it says team colors. I can enable those. Since we're not working in a team per se, instead, let's go to that again and go to plugins and manage plugins. So these are going to be default plugins that you can install onto the application. So if I go to, let's see here, community, and go to wireframes, you can see here that they will show me some of the wireframe libraries or communities that you can utilize. So you can see here, there, and some of these are just nice because they have some icons that you can choose from. So you can feel free to go through these and kind of take a quick look. I'm always looking for one that just has some basic things involved in it. There also is, when you go to your recents, there are some defaults. So you'll see there'll be a wireframing in Figma under recents. Then if I click on that, I can copy and paste some of this over as well. So you can see I go in here. You see we have some size images, some buttons, a sign up page, different footers that they've included. So there's some other things that I could bring over if I wanted to. Now most of these are all for web sites, not as helpful for us, but just knowing where they are. Let me go back here again. I downloaded this mobile wireframing kit. So if you go under community and wireframes, that's one of the options underneath there. And let's just pick one so you can see how this works. So I'll do there's free iPhone 12 mockups, Android and iOS wireframe kit. So let's try this one. So I'm going to click the download button. And then it says duplicate in your drafts. So I'm going to go to my drafts. And here it is, the first one. It'll open it up for us. And then what we can see here is on the side. It has some different pages. So let's go to the iOS one. So what it has in here is just some things that are pre-made that can be really nice. Some icons and symbols, some controls to turn things on and off. You know, maybe you want a button, a secondary button, a calendar, some toggles that maybe for filtering, some pop-ups, the keyboard, all really helpful. So first thing is I like on this one is some of the bars that are on most phones. So I'm going to take over this bar. I'm going to just copy it, come over here. I'm going to unlock my splash page and paste that on, put that in place. Use this left-hand side to get perfect. And then I can copy it and go on to the next one and paste that on. So I have the time and just to kind of, again, get a feel for the layout. And then there should also be one for the bottom. It's the tab bar. Maybe this one doesn't have it, but there's a little bar at the bottom. So that's a good start. And then you can see over here, if we wanted to do a 5 or a 4, this is perfect. Oh, there's that little bar. So I'm going to use the 4, and I'm going to bring that over. And now an easy way to duplicate screens is to click, roll over the name of the page, and if you hold down Option on your keyboard, just like in Illustrator, you can drag out additional boards. So I can drag out a couple more of these to kind of prepare. I'm going to change this from the login screen to my home screen, and then paste these in. So I have these to kind of work with. Now I'm going to go back to my login screen, and let's go over. I'm going to make my login screen. So what I want first is I'm going to have my logo up at the top here, and then I'm going to have some text that says sign in. And again, I'm going to just do this kind of quickly. Now, I have my text, and you can see it's teeny tiny. So I'd go over to the design side over here on the right, and this is where I could change the font. I could make it larger. I could center it. I could change the color of it. I could do any of these things. So that's all over here on this side. Here's the fill color if I wanted to. I could add a stroke, add an effect, so on and so forth. I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to make another one. Now this is going to be where they fill in. So I'm not going to have I'm going to turn off the fill. Make it white. And then go to my stroke and add a stroke. So I have 1 pixel around it, and that's going to be my login. Zoom in a little bit. I'll duplicate that. I'm just going to hold, again, Option on the keyboard to duplicate just like I would in Illustrator. And I can add some text to this. So I can do email. Change the color of that to be like a gray. And I'll change the font to not be semi-bold. There we go. And I'll do password. So now we're starting to think about wording of things. We're also trying to think about our buttons. So if I go back to this one, I think they had some buttons I'm going to use. Oh, they did have a text input. Look at that. I could have used that. I'm going to do this one. Paste my button. I'm going to make this smaller. So I can make this smaller and grab these corners. Oops. If you drag this over, so if I take this over here, you can see it's going to eventually flop onto the next screen. There's kind of this like in-between place. I have my button here. I can see on this side what that button is, and it's grouped in there. So I'm going to change the text on that to say submit. And I will try to take this button, trying to make this a little smaller. Not vertically, I wanted to do it horizontal width. Why is my width? I think that's something is locked. Oh, it's a full width button. Okay, so that's the name of the button. So we'll just leave it like that. That would bug me, but I will try to let that go. So then from here, we're going to go to my home screen. And on the home screen, I'm going to have some kind of feed, let's say. So let's see what I want this to kind of look like. Is there anything here I can kind of utilize for that? Not really. So what I wanted to do is have this kind of look like a feed. So I'm going to put a logo at the top. And again, notice how the images are just with squares. And then I would start my feed. I'm not sure exactly what this would look like yet, but I'm going to kind of add. And you can always just use lines for text. So you kind of get an idea. This would be like 2 lines of text, maybe some kind of headline here. And then I would maybe want some buttons underneath this. So I'm thinking this as like some kind of feed. And my idea here is after I get this together in one more minute, I'm going to just use some icons. Let's do size this down. Okay, so now that this is kind of the way that I want it to look, I'm going to select it all by dragging a rectangle around it. I'm going to group it together by hitting Command G or Control G. Notice how that put that in a folder for me, just like the same shortcuts, and then I can copy it. So I can, this is going to be my feed, just kind of showing how there'll be a couple different things here. I'm even going to go over this because I want to show you how we can go lower. So let's pretend this is an infinite feed. I'm not going to go forever, but I am going to put a couple underneath so we get the idea of that scrolling. Now on my home screen over here in my layers, I want to make sure that my icons are on top of everything. So I'm going to drag up those 4. You can re-drag your layers by clicking on it and then dragging to the top. So now you can see it doesn't overlap. And I want this to be fixed. So what I'm going to do is come in here and I'm going to click on it. And over on the right hand side, if I go to prototype, no, if I stay in design and I say down here on constraints, I can click the fix position when scrolling. So that's an actual button that'll keep it in place when you scroll. So now let's hit play and kind of see what this looks like. So up in the top bar, I can hit this play button. It's going to open it in a new tab. And what it's going to do is you can see at the bottom, you can scroll through. So there's my first screen, my splash screen, then my sign-in screen, and then here's my feed that I can want to be able to scroll. What's my 4th screen? Oh, 4th was nothing. All right, so this is fixed. Oh, so notice I can't scroll. So let's go back and fix that. So the reason is, even though we have content underneath, the artboard itself is too short. So if I click on the name home screen, I can come over here and make this home screen longer. So you can see how you can make this infinitely long. And then let's go back here. And now you can see that I can scroll up and down. So you have to make the artboard longer to be able to scroll. And then let's see, finally, what else should we go over here? So we have artboard. We know these are all our shapes that we can work with, our type tool, how to make a fixed element. Finally, let's just say, so we can share by obviously clicking the share. I'm going to save it by going to my little hamburger in the upper left and just say save. So this will save it as a file that you can download as well. It's going to automatically save in Figma, so I can just come up here and click on the name Untitled and say App Wireframe version 1. It's going to just stay there. And then I can download it as a PDF by going to the hamburger and going to Save Export Frames as PDF. It's going to save each one as a separate PDF. I could also share a link, so it would make a URL that anyone can view. So I can open this in a browser, so we can link this on Padlet. And they can see it here. So a lot of different, we can share the prototype, copy link, and let's do that. I think that would be a better situation if we can see the phone. Yep, looks good. So we can go through and take a look at those. So those are the basics of Figma. We'll go over this in class as well, but you're going to be using your sitemap and start thinking about all these different screens now and what they're going to look like with your paper wireframes, now converting them into low fidelity.